Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BFI Film Academy's May Lab. My name is Alex, and I'm the Film Academy Festival and Events Manager. And today is the first lab of our 2022-23 season, and also the first session in a two-part series, which is all about screenwriting. So in this session today, we'll discuss how to develop and structure your idea into a short film script. And we'll be talking to the award-winning director and writer, Sarah Clift. The talk will be hosted by Theresa Boden, who is a freelance writer and script consultant. And she's also a BFI Film Academy script doctor. So some of you may have met her at the BFI Feature Film Festival or one of our previous labs events. But just before I introduce Theresa to all of you, I'll let you know a little bit about how the session today will be structured. So just some housekeeping tips. My colleague No is working behind the scenes. He's already said hello to you in the chat box. That chat box is for you guys to use. So say hello. If you have any kind of generic questions for us, for the BFI Film Academy team, feel free to post those questions in the chat. Any questions about the BFI, about Film Academy, about our labs, anything like that. However, if you have any questions that are specific to today's session, so questions about screenwriting questions for Theresa and for Sarah, then please pop those questions in the Q&A box, which is on the bottom of your screens. And my colleague Sarah will be managing that Q&A box, and we will devote the last 15 minutes of today's session to your questions, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So start popping your questions in there now, and we'll get to them at the end. And just one final thing to let you know is that today's session is being recorded, and we'll post the recording on the BFI YouTube channel later on this week. So you will be able to watch the session again, don't worry. So that's it. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Theresa, who's going to lead today's session. Welcome, Theresa.
Hello there. Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce Sarah. Sarah, if you want to pop in now.
Hey, Theresa.
Hiya. So, hello, everybody. I'm delighted to introduce to you the award-winning writer and director, Sarah Clift, of whom we've had quite a long working relationship, haven't we, now, for quite a while. Sarah's background is in writing award-winning advertisement campaigns, but in 2016 she wrote and directed her first short film, which was La Madre Buena, or The Good Mother, which received 50 wins and nominations, screening at Academy and BAFTA recognised festivals, and was a BFI Network post-room pick. She was selected subsequently as one of the 2018 BFI Network London Film Festival filmmakers for breaking boundaries in film. Sarah's second short, The Birth of Valerie Venus, was co-funded by the BFI Network. You can see a thread here. Won numerous awards, qualifying for Oscar consideration, and BAFTA longlisted for the Best British Short Film in 2021. She's been voted Best Writer of the Year, Best New International Director, Best British Independent Film Awards, long listed, and her work has screened at many venues, including the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and the House of Commons. She's currently working on several film and TV projects focusing on unique stories led by strong female characters, which include the feature film Spinsterhood, which has been developed through iFeatures, also supported by the BFI, BBC Films, Creative England and Screensills, and also The Life of a Saint, or La Vida de un Santo. So welcome, Sarah.
Hey, Theresa. That was quite a mouthful.
And it was long, but I wanted to get it all in. I wanted to know how wonderful you are. So this evening, we're going to be discussing how to develop your simple premise, your character dilemma, your single moment in time or what if into a story synopsis and an outline before you embark on your first draft of the script. And we will be particularly focusing on structure and character development. So, you know, story is the what and structure is the how. How are you telling that story? So, and although we're talking about live action narrative, it's equally applicable to documentary or even experimental film. So, you know, they all still have a narrative structure, so it's important. So you've got your premise or your idea, so what's next? You just head on into the script? Or can we persuade you of the benefit of and importance of development? Sarah, where do you start when you've got an idea?
Well, I learned that the last thing you do is write the script, and you spend an awful lot of time doing your prep work and getting your outline sorted and knowing what on earth it really is you're writing about. But I have to confess that the first thing I did when I first wrote a short film was write the script, and I couldn't really understand what was wrong with it, but I knew something was wrong. So yeah, that's the number one rule, first of all.
That's a really good takeaway, because I think a lot of writers starting out think, oh, I kind of know the story, so let's just, I'll just head on into the script and then get lost halfway through. So to begin with, I mean, I think it's interesting, because you've worked in advertising, so you have already a very visual sense. You write visually, and film is a visual medium, and sometimes that's difficult to kind of get to grips with, that we're showing and not telling. But once you've got your idea, now what do you do? Do you kind of like think about the theme or the tone or the genre before you start actually fleshing it out?
Yeah, well, I think like getting the idea is the hard thing, and what is the idea, and sometimes it's like it can just be a smidgen of something, where you think, I suppose with La Madre Buena, I found a Donald Trump piñata, and this was before Donald Trump was in the race for the elections with Hillary, and I knew that I wanted to do something with a piñata, and then I knew I wanted to put it on the back of a motorbike, and I mean, you could say, well, that was my idea, but it wasn't a story, and then I sort of went through. I had to really go on instinct to create that first short film, and I think that's what got me through the whole process. I think what then was a shock. I mean, we can go into that in a bit more detail, but I think what was the shock was once I'd made that film, and once it did have this sort of almost shock success, I found myself on a stage winning an award or at a Q&A, and they thrust the microphone in my face and said, well, why did you want to make this, and what's the story about, and they asked all these questions, and I really felt on the spot. And I sort of realized to myself that, okay, these questions are really helpful to start off the process when you next make a short film. And that's how I've started writing everything else that I've written since then, is that I think about what questions you're going to get asked at the Q&A at the end and let's use them on a piece of paper first of all. So really, what is the idea? What are you trying to say? And why does anybody need to watch this and be interested? Yeah. And I think those for me are the really important questions to start with before you sort of move forward.
I mean, that is all to do with theme, but it's difficult because sometimes theme takes a while to emerge, and it can sometimes only emerge at the end of writing a script, really clearly. I mean, there are things like rom-com is clear in conception, because that's what it's about. It's it's about finding love or desire, but that you mentioned once, because like, what on earth am I doing this for? And I think that's kind of quite important. It's kind of like, what is it that excites you about that idea? What's your passion? What is it that you want to get across? And does it have a personal connection? I think that can help sometimes. So, I mean, your personal connection was you were at that time in Mexico, and it was something you were thinking about. It brought up things for you. And somebody like sort of, for instance, County Lines by Henry Blake, his personal connection to that material is what kind of, authored the story in the end and the character. So I think theme is kind of linked to the why are you doing it, and I think if you don't know why you're doing it, then maybe, I don't know, you have to find some way in, don't you, to to actually have a connection to it.
Yeah, I think they're important. I think, you know, it's not like you're going to crack those 3 questions at the beginning and everything's going to fall into place and you'll just land on the keyboard and everything will just make sense. I mean, the whole process is really messy, but I think if you can have some kind of framework where you keep coming back to those questions and keep thinking about it, no matter what stage you are. So if you start doing an outline or some free writing, and then later on you go to the script, but you keep coming back to them questions. And even when you're in the edit, you keep coming back to them questions. It's really helpful. And you're going to have to answer them to everybody, every cast member, every crew member, anyone who you're trying to get some funding from. You know, they're going to want to know really why are you making this, right? Why are you connected this? And why should we also really want to follow and invest our time into this? So they're helpful.
Yeah. It's a common thing often when reading scripts. It's like, well, why should I care? You know, I actually need to invest as an audience member or as a reader. I need to invest in the story or the character that you're showing me. You know, that's really important. Do you think about genre before you start, or do you have an idea and then kind of think, well, what genre will this kind of suit? Or
well, I think it depends also if you're wanting to make the film yourself, or you're a screenwriter and you want another director to make it. And I think you generally, I mean, I would imagine most people have an idea what kind of films they want to make, whether they want to make comedy or they want to make hard-hitting drama, you know, or whether they want to make a horror, you know. So I think you might have a feeling of that. So I mean, my sweet space is comedy drama. So I kind of know that I want to develop films going forward for that. And I also know that when I was making the 2 shorts, I knew that I wanted to get to a feature that was going to be dramatic comedy. So I was thinking always like, okay, what are these shorts leading to? I think, you know, if you have that aim of, you know, where you want to go and it's make a longer form film or longer form TV, it's maybe not a bad idea to think about what sort of genre you want to be working in now.
I think it's often a good idea, as you know, as when you're starting out, to play with different genres, you know, so you can use the same story but just put it into a different genre, you know, and see if it works, you know. But you'll need to, you know, obviously it's looking at the different tropes that apply to different genres, so employ those in the story. But that's often a good way of finding your voice as well, you know, that, you know, what actually floats your boat, you know. And that can come from the films that you like to watch. You know, there are sci-fi fans who want to write sci-fi, you know, and that's fine. But I think Gabriella will go into this much more in detail in the genre session next month. But it's important to do your due diligence on finding out what those tropes. So you can just Google, you know, genre and Google kind of, you know, horror tropes, and it will give you a whole list of things that, you know, appear in every horror film. You know, there are the things that happen to characters. I think genre is also important to be clear, for you to be clear about genre, because it's how films are grouped in festival programming. You know, if you're writing, directing a film for, you know, to put into festivals, then make it easy on the festival programmers to know where they place your film, because they'll group them in genre groupings. And also it's about marketing and selling a film, you know, that's for shorts and features, you know.
Yeah, I think also the tricky thing with genre is there's some festivals that won't take on certain genre, you know. Right. So, you know, there's certain festival, you know, if there's a festival that you think, all I want to do is play at that particular festival, I think start looking at what films they're playing. Because if you want to make horror, but you want to film, you know, you want your film to go to a certain festival and they never touch horror, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have a tough job, you know. And so I think it really helps just to do a bit of investigating, like what's, you know, if you want to make a film and you want to put it out there and you want to experiment, it's really good, and you need to keep making and doing as much as you can. If you've got something really specific in mind, like you want to hit a certain festival, you want this film to move you on to the next, to something else, you just need to look at it and think a bit forward, about what that's for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's important, and also because the fashion and the focus changes all the time. So it's worth doing. Having a look at, and that's true of when you're writing. When you're writing, watch short films. Just get to know the form. Really understand it. Watch as many as you can, really, in lots of different genres, and you'll learn an enormous amount from that anyway. So how do you think about your target audience then when you're developing an idea?
I suppose so.
To resonate with.
I suppose, like, to an extent. I think short film though is also you've got we're here to experiment and try things out and like find our voices and do things we shouldn't do and push against what anybody tells you. Go and do the opposite and see what happens. That's the point of it as well. But do I think about the audience? Yeah, I do, in the fact that the second short that I made, I knew I really wanted to do something about the female orgasm. And I started looking for material about that. And then I could only find imagery or film imagery that was really in a beautiful way that was based around young people. And then I sort of thought, well, what's bothering me is that there's not older people in this situation and that it's not beautiful. Or if you do see older people, it's like, oh, that's awful. And so that for me was really, okay, well, I want to talk to the audience, but I want to show them something they've not seen before, and I want to talk and put it in a way that they've not seen it presented. So I think that's how I like to use audience and that again that's going to get, that's how to get into festivals and to get noticed. And for, if it makes people feel uncomfortable, I think that's generally a good thing. So,
yeah, well, absolutely. And it's all about, making it unique and fresh, and it's a different point of view. So, I mean, same with La Madre Breno. I remember you said at some point that, you wanted to present a different view of Mexico than the assumption, of sensationalism and violence. It's a different landscape, and that's a reason for doing the film, that that's what you want to do, to actually kind of make a different point of view available for people, to challenge their assumptions, challenge their expectations. And that's about also surprising your audience. So we're not, it's not predictable, it's not a predictable story. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we are, and you can do that with short films so well. You can just play.
Yeah, I think, like you were just mentioning about the fact that I used to work in commercials. So I used to be a creative in TV commercials and advertising agencies in London for a long time. And one thing I was always taught from my bosses as I was sort of going up the ranks was that, always create something that you've never seen on screen before. Because, like, really, you could say sometimes film and TV now, we're sort of awash with imagery and content, like we are awash with commercials, and it was always about trying to find something distinctive, new, something that you'd never seen visually before, to try and create standout. And I think for me, that's part of the process for me, is like, how have I not seeing that point of view, not seeing that image before, just trying to build that in. And that's what's really important about doing your research of what's out there,
Yeah, absolutely. Just, again, it's know the form. So to watch as many short films, to many festival kind of online festivals as you can.
Mhm.
See what's happening, and so what's been done before, because they do find that there was a piece written by somebody who was one of the programmers at Sundance a few years ago, but they were saying, that how not to write a festival short, and it was basically, we don't want to see these tropes again, because they had so many of the same stories through. But it's not about the story per se, it's about your treatment of that story. So how do you make it fresh? How do you make it, different and unusual?
Well, just to interject with that, is that comes back to, and you'll use this, I'm sure, in a lot in your teaching, is that there's only a certain amount of stories in the world, but it's how we present, like it's 7, isn't it? But it's like, it's how you present them and dress them up, and given you take them. So it shouldn't put you off. You should just have, like, what's your individual connection that makes the way you're telling this different to anybody else? And so only by going into what you know and your experience, that's the most unique thing. So, all the participants on this chat is like, we'd all write a different story about the same story because we're all very different.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an exercise that you give occasionally, to say, this is the story, this is the premise. Now you all expand it into a kind of like a short synopsis, and all of them will be completely different.
Yeah.
Because they'll have a completely different take on the same idea. That's the beauty of it. And I think also probably, that, especially working with you, I'm really impressed by the way that, working in commercials, it allows you to kind of let an idea breathe. So you're really keen on kind of expanding or exploding an idea to find the furthest reaches of the possibilities of the story, not leaving a single stone unturned. And I think that's such a wonderful way to work, because it's, you have to be a bit fearless. You have to be prepared for the mess, don't you, as a writer? You just have to kind of let go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it drives the producers mad sometimes, or the script consultant. But I think, I think for me, it was always, because look, I think we all we'll all, if we start with the same brief, generally we'll get a lot of the same ideas, all of us on the same, more or less. And it's just looking for that one that's really unique that no one else has thought of. So when I was in creative departments, it was really competitive, and you were fighting to try, a brief would go out and there'd maybe be, 20, 40 people writing on that brief, and you're trying to get your idea through. And so you just have to come at it at some quite bizarre angles sometimes. And so I do like to do that now. I feel uncomfortable if I haven't looked at everything in various ways. And I think generally if I find a story and I think, oh, this works really quickly, maybe there's something wrong with it. and then I'll probably get the sledgehammer out and just, go, right, I'm going to start again and do it in a completely different way. And then I'll come at it a different way. And it's all right, because you've already written that story and that exists. And it doesn't mean you've got rid of it and thrown it in the bin. It's just you're looking if there's an alternative way. Or that's when I think genre is really helpful. And just sort of like, I didn't understand a thing about genre really. Like I'd watched stacks of films all through my life, but I didn't really understand how that worked or moved story forward. So it took a lot of learning. But it's a really useful tool when you get to that place where you've got your story and then you think, okay, well, what can I do? What if I made this a horror? Or what if it was a comedy and it was set in a completely different place? Or what if it was from a different gender or a different perspective? Or, what if I didn't like the person who's the protagonist? So it's just sort of good exercises, because you might find that thing that you never expected that really excites you.
Yeah.
And
you
can also go back to the first one. So
Sorry?
you can always go back to your first story.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the same with any of your development documents or your scripts, even, you know,
Yeah.
if you decide that you're stuck on the script and you can't, it's really, really, really bugging you that you can't get past a problem, just save a copy of it and then and then rip it up and start again. Okay, so that kind of brings us on to kind of like developments tools, you know, the things that we use in development documents. So that, I don't mean things like treatments, which are selling documents really. So things like you know, your premise, which would be like a short paragraph, or a synopsis. For a short film, that might be a single page or 4 short paragraphs, which would be kind of like your first paragraph would be the first act and then the beginning, and then your middle 2 would be the middle of the story, and then the 4th paragraph would be the end. Or you might, you know, you might use outlines, step outlines, which we'll discuss in a little bit more things, or storyboards or mood boards. So what do you like to use? What's your process when you start?
Well, if I've answered them questions, I'll then, well, it depends. Sometimes I'll start with a bullet pointed beats of sort of basically what is this story. It might be 5 beats. I might only have 3. I might be missing quite a few, but I might try that. And then sometimes I'll do, I know we've discussed it before, but like free writing session where I just go, I really don't know what this story is. I'm just going to have a coffee and just write. And I'm not going to worry about what comes out at the end. And sometimes it might take a few sessions like that to do that. And then I won't worry about it. And then I'll sort of print it all off, or I'll review it online or whatever, and just mark up bits that I like, or I think that's interesting, that I think, oh, okay, I think there's a bit of a story here. And generally, if there's a block where I'm like struggling with I don't know what the end is, I might just go, right, I'm just going to sit and free write endings today.
Yeah.
And I think free writing for me is a really helpful tool when you're stuck on a part of a story, because it just sort of, it doesn't matter what you put down. You're not trying to make the story. You're just trying to get yourself out of some of these problems and explore stuff. So I'll do those, but I always come back to just like Word document, bullet points of trying to get down in some basic sentences what's happened. You know, why, who's at the start, you know, and what's just happened and where's their story going. Yeah. So, I mean, that's my basic thing. And I'm plotty. I work naturally with plot. So I'll just sort of, that's why I like bullet points. So
I was just about to ask that, because it sounds like it's starting from structure and story plot rather than character. So is that normally how that's the way around that you work? Because I know that I tend to go character. The character takes me into the story.
Yeah. Well, I think I didn't really, you know, I'm being really honest, but like the beginning, I didn't know whether I was more plot based in the way I was writing or character based in the way I was writing. I was just writing and I was trying to get my ideas sorted out. And I think over time and practice, I realize I'm quite plotty, but I now focus more on character development. So sometimes I might just, I think with experience and time, I've learned, okay, I can start a story from character first, and what's their journey and where they're going and what do they need to shift in themselves? What's the problem? So yeah, I think now I can play about with it. But I think just at the beginning, just get it down, you know, like, don't worry about that stuff. You know, well, just, I mean, you've got to go with naturally.
Yeah, you can, I mean, it's, I often say if you're having problems with character as well, free writing is a really good way of looking at character.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of, you know, character exercises you can do to kind of like get to grips with who the character is. Because even, you know, I think you would agree probably that, you know, even for short films, it's necessary that you know your characters inside out, your central character, you know who they are. Because if you know exactly who they are and how they would react to any given instance, it means that when you are reforming that structure or shifting that, what happens in the story, how they're going to react, what that character development is going to be as it changes. I mean, I think that's as important, I think it's a really important thing to kind of really discover before you start writing what the beginning and the end is. Sometimes the middle, that comes through the writing, because it can be a little bit nebulous even in outline and structure in your synopsis and your development documents, but you need to know where that story direction is going. You need to know where that character's going to end up, or where you want them to end up before you start. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe everyone's heard this already, but it is that classic, like, we're going from A to B, and what's the most, you need to know, like, where you're going. So we're all going to get in the car, and if I'm going to I'm from Yorkshire, so if I'm going to head from Yorkshire to London, I need to know I'm going to London.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll never get to London. Yeah. I don't know where I'll get. I might get somewhere better, or I might get somewhere worse. I don't know. But it's a bit of a gamble. But then once I know I'm going from Yorkshire to London, what route do I want to take? Maybe I want the fastest. Maybe I want a scenic one. Maybe I want to stop somewhere on the way. I've always, maybe I want to go to Northampton on the way. It's just sort of, I think just as long as you know how to get you going from A to B, and then you can have fun in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic storytelling, back from Aristotle and and down through everybody else. But it's almost intuitive in a lot of people, in that we tell stories every day, so we tell naturally beginning, middle, and end. Whatever happened to you on the tube that day, what happened when you got off the tube, how it changed you, what happened. You intuitively tell that story to your friends or your workmates, and same with like jokes. I mean, jokes are sort of storytelling in a nutshell. You have the setup, the beginning, and you need the punchline, and if the punchline doesn't come at the right point, no joke. So it's really simple and intuitive, so everybody knows it. But I think actually kind of putting it to work in a short film story is sometimes a little bit daunting. So it's because there is a classic kind of 3-act structure. I know that kind of John York goes into 5-act structures, there's 4-act structures, there's any number of structures, but the basics, it's a good thing to kind of get to grips with. We were saying the other day, it's like, playing the piano, you want to play jazz piano, but you need to know all the chords and the notes first before you can actually improvise. So it can really help, because a short film it needs to have one central dramatic question, and one character's sort of central arc to follow. So you're not messing about with subplots, and we don't have time for all of that. We don't have time for lots of exposition. And so I think that's a useful way of approaching it, if you approach it in a 3-act style. So your first act, we need the setup, so in La Madre Buena, as everybody should watch it, the link is on the sheet at the end. But so what did you feel was the inciting incident for La Madre Buena?
Probably at the time I had no idea. Like,
but you did it intuitively, you see, because I think at the moment he says Trump, she's got this huge problem that she's got to find a Trump for her, to make her son happy.
Yeah, no, I mean, what did I want to do? Well, it's sort of like, okay, I wanted a Trump piñata in there. Okay, kids have piñatas. We're going to do a birthday party. Okay, well, we're going to need to get the Trump piñata. There's going to have to be a bit of conflict. So maybe this mum really doesn't want this piñata, but she loves her son. So what's the conflict here? Do I love my son more, or do I have strong feelings? Are my feelings stronger for him than my love for my son? So, I mean, that is the sort of the debate. and the conflict. And I think that's where the question arises. And then off you go, you know.
Well, that's your first act with your setup, you know, the mother, the son, and then your dramatic question, inciting incident, you know, and the dramatic question, and that sends us into the second act where she begins to engage with the problem. But things start to escalate, as they should.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I mean, the whole point is that for every story, the protagonist should never be able to get what they want too easily, or there'd be no story. So the point is, she's decided to go and get this piñata, but she can't get hold of it. So, you know, so she has to almost go to the ends of the earth to find it. And that allowed me then to present Mexico in a different light. Yeah. So.
But also there's the lovely, because there's always with a character, there's the external goal and there's the internal goal. And her external goal, obviously, you know, on the surface, she wants to kind of get this, she wants to try and get this piñata. But the internal goal is actually when that heartbreaking moment when he says, oh, another ugly birthday, and he stops eating, and he, you know, she wants to make him happy. She can't bear to see him unhappy. So that's the, you know, this internal kind of like, I want my son to be, you know, have a happy birthday. And that's, you know, that takes over, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's the love for the mother's son. So by having conflict with two things, it's really easy, I suppose, to find your natural internal and external goal. Yep. So if you don't put conflict in there, you're really going to struggle, you know.
Yes. Well, conflict is drama. So, you know, you don't have any conflict. It doesn't have to be massive, you know. No. I mean, a character's want in a short film can be quite small, as long as it's significant to them, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think here's the thing about scenes as well. If you're directing a scene, is that every scene obviously needs to have a conflict, and every character needs to have a conflict. So when I did some sessions with a directing actors coach, they told me, you know, one thing was like, okay, this woman's just sat in the bath reading a newspaper. And I was like, well, how can that have conflict? But he's like, well, maybe there should be a fly that's coming in and like buzzing around and making that a difficult moment for her. She wants to relax and the fly won't let her. So I think you can find conflict in anything, or you should be looking for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So if we're starting off with kind of like the development tools. So I mean, if you're writing a synopsis, if that's what you want to do, then always write it as a short story in the present tense and in the third person, and only write what we can see. So, you know, we don't, if there should be no backstory unless we're actually going to be seeing that on the screen, and help us to visualize what we're seeing. So the show don't tell. But then if you want to go into kind of an outline, like a step outline. So a step outline or an outline, sequence outline, or sometimes it's called a beat sheet as well. It's really helpful in actually identifying, you know, the structure of the piece. So, you know, you're basically doing a scene by scene kind of description of what happens in each scene, so and to whom, so that you can work out the actual kind of structure of the film script, and it's really useful if you're starting out to use it as an exercise to analyze short films. So I would advise you to watch La Madre Buena and kind of and with the pause button and a pad and a pen, and just write a sentence or two on each scene. So as a scene stops, press the pause button, write down what you've just seen. And then you start to get an eye for how to analyze, you know, the structure, and then you can use that to inform your own practice. I think that's a really kind of like a useful exercise. I remember that Scorsese said the way to learn screenwriting was to write a film synopsis down or step outline down by hand. which I think is a bit extreme, but apparently people say it works. So if you've got your outlines, also there's things called mood boards, which I know that you use, don't you? You like to use mood boards in development. How does that work? How do you?
I use it, I mean, I use them in two ways. I use them to help me get the world in my head, and I use them to help me find new ideas. I also use them when I'm getting stuck on a problem. And I think also, if for any writer directors, I think sometimes, you know, like, can feel very dry sometimes, script writing and dissecting stuff. And I need to like put some energy back into the process. I might spend 2 or 3 hours on Pinterest or, you know, like some visual search engine and start looking for images that inspire me or I find exciting, or, you know, and, you know, and just sort of lucky dips and things come up from that. And I sort of start to maybe build a world of like who's the character could be, or, and push that through visuals. And I think also it's a really good exercise, because if you're trying to all the time think in, I've got to write down what the person, what I see them doing. I can't write down any emotions. You know, I need to write down their reactions to things and their actions to things. So actions and reactions. And I think by looking at pictures, that really helps me do that, you know, and keeps
in terms of visuals and actors, don't you?
Yeah. So, you know, I think when you do get to script, a really good tip is don't rely heavy on parentheses above any dialogue to tell an actor what they should be doing, feeling, thinking in below it. Because, and I know there is, you know, you'll read some scripts, like I know, for example, I was reading Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Fleabag, and that has a lot of specific feelings above it, but she's also the actress. It's also, you know, she is part of that process. And I think you will offend actors if you start telling them how to play a line in your script. I mean, it is a no-no. So I'd say write your first draft without any of them in. And then if there's something really specific that you need to put in for that, then okay, later.
Yeah. Well, we usually say it's kind of like, if it's something that parentheticals, you know, with dialogue, you know, usually if it can't be conveyed by the dialogue, so sarcasm, for instance, or whispering, you know, that's, and it's particularly important to, you know, to get that across. But everything else, I usually say you should have confidence in that your dialogue actually conveys your intention, you know, and then yes, please let the actor do their job, you know, because that's what happens with your blueprint. You hand it over and they get on with it.
But, you know, rather than angry, you know, Neil throws a stone at the glass and smashes it. That's anger.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's when you're writing your description, and also when you're writing your synopsis, to kind of keep that in mind, that you're writing visually. So you can't really write what a character feels, because I can't see that. So translate it into action. I think, you know, in terms of structure, it's important with a short film to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. So, and I think I've directed you at the end to kind of have a look at the Pixar. They have a great paradigm which is useful for shorts, which is really kind of, it's very, very simple. So it's kind of like just like 6 or 7 steps. So once upon a time, which is the who, what, when, and where. And so if we were looking at Up, for instance, it's the couple, you know, the happy older couple who've been traveling and adventuring. And then the second one is every day. So that's the routine. So what's the story world? You know, what's the status quo? They're going to plan adventures in Up. And then one day, something happens. There's a change, and in Up, the wife unfortunately gets sick and passes away. So because of that, the character journey starts happening. So in Up, he starts off on his risky adventure of flying the house away, and then because of that, there's no going back. He finds he has a stowaway. Because of that, he has to change his trip, and because of that, something else happens until you get to Until Finally. So, and that's the resolution and the climax, and everything comes to, full circle, and it answers that dramatic question posed at the beginning, of, what are you going to do? Where's your adventure gone? Where's your love life? And where's your adventure gone? He realizes that true adventure is caring for people that you love. So it's always got to kind of, it's once you've set up that dramatic question at the beginning, you have to loop back to it at the end. There has to be some resolution of that dramatic question, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter, but as long as there is a resolution there. I think, it's great with La Madre Buena. I love the fact that she manages it, she brings it back, despite her misgivings, and then we've all thought, oh, he's into Trump, this boy, he's a bit conservative, he's kind of strange, but he just goes straight in and batters his head. And it's lovely because that whole dramatic question of her wondering about her son, where has he got this from? What's that come from? And that's answered at the end. He just wants a Trump pinata to beat it out.
Yeah. I mean, and what's funny, or what could be seen as funny, is the fact of, the mother, Monica, is sat there right at the beginning, and her son asks for a Donald Trump pinata. And one of the things she could be thinking right there and then is, this is no son of mine, what on earth is he doing asking for that? I thought I'd taught him better, and it's like, he's definitely not from my loins, who is this person? And I think, and then at the end, it's answered that it's like, oh no, this is my son. We are on the same page. We are together. But she's gone on a journey thinking that it wasn't, but it's about the relationship with her son.
And same for Valerie Venus. It's a glorious resolution at the end. Okay, so I think once you've got kind of like your structure and the story set up, it's worth kind of revisiting character to make sure that the character journey is kind of, that arc is clear. And I think that there are lots of ways of approaching kind of character interrogation. Do you do free writing for character development? Question. I mean, I normally kind of like, it's kind of like it, in the same way as when you interrogate the idea of the idea to find out what it is, you should be interrogating your character, so where's the character at the beginning of the story, where are they, and what are the obstacles that they're going to go through, what kind of a person are they, what are they going to want, sometimes films come through and the goals aren't clear, that the actual characters' goals aren't very clear. There might be a story there, but that I think that can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
How did you work on Valerie Venus in terms of her journey?
Yeah, well, character, the best thing I think is we inject personality traits of people because that's the only way you can really make them, then they're real, so think about your mates, think about people in your family, think about the people that that annoy you or bother you, and what is it that they're doing, what are their bad habits, what's going on, and sometimes I inject a bit of that into characters, and it really helps like develop them and push them through, and so there's a bit of like my mum and dad in Norman and Valerie Venus, you know, and they know that and they've read it and they understand it, but not in a way you'd expect either, because my mum and dad are nothing like the two characters in that, you know, but there's some personality pieces in there. And so, yeah, I think that's the thing I find the easiest. You've got to think about somebody and you've got to lock on to somebody. So sometimes I might even, for example, like Valerie Venus, I just had in my head that I was thinking about Imelda Staunton, the actress, when I was writing that. And then she is married to a chap, Jim, who was in Downton Abbey. And I loved the fact that Jim was massive and Imelda's a lot smaller than him. And that, for me, that was a really helpful way of just like, because I'd seen them on film and TV in different parts, I could think about, oh, okay, how does some of their character traits work, you know, with that size difference? And what does, you know, like the husband doesn't have to say something too threatening, but his size is threatening. So, but then actually when I cast it in a different way. But it helped me through the writing process. And that was what I think is building visual storyboards helps you determine, okay, maybe your character's got like something they're self-conscious about. Maybe they're self-conscious about their nose. Maybe it's too small. Maybe they broke it when they were young. Maybe it's too big. Maybe they can only breathe out of one nostril. But just like start to give them some quirks. So when you're writing them, you're bringing these people to life. They've got thoughts and feelings and problems, and they're just trying to get through with their own stuff.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it's creating those quirky kind of unique kind of characters, even though you might be looking at kind of character traits of the people around you that you know. Physicality is a great place to start as well, because it does inform how they kind of operate in the landscape of the story, you know. So, you know, that's all to do with the setting and, you know, where they are. I think also it's a really nice thing to kind of think about where they, you know, what kind of things they're going to end up in at the end, how that changes. So what the change might be. The change might be physical. It might not be emotional or mental. It can be all sorts of different things. So you can actually kind of explore all of those things. Another thing that comes up is antagonists. So antagonists in short films, people sometimes think, oh, I have to, you know, they're just one note. They can be kind of just unpleasant, or, you know, but I think the thing to remember sometimes is that everybody, whoever they are, whatever issues they've got, people tend to think they're in the right generally. And it's worth thinking about when you're writing characters that are antagonistic or, you know, not likable. So it's the same situation that actors do with, you know, when they're playing villains or something. They find something that is understandable or likable about relatable about a character. And I think that's important to do as a writer when you're writing those characters, to make them three-dimensional just as much as your central character is. You know, don't just focus on the central character and everybody else is just a kind of a, you know, sketch, more of a sketch.
Yeah, well, I mean, that comes down to writing scenes for actors to play. So you know, I had to do some work, like I learned more about screenwriting, and then I learned more about directing actors, and then the two really fused together for me. And when you're on set, you need to give a note to both actors, and you need to give them both a goal to go after something, and they've got to create a conflict. And when they create that conflict on screen is when, like, your scene comes alive and it looks exciting and it feels exciting, and everyone's like, wow, that was just really interesting. So, and that starts when you're writing. So, you know, it's just who's got the stronger want at any given time, you know. And that antagonist, you know, maybe their want is stronger at the beginning, and the protagonist has a want, but they're maybe a bit of a flawed character, and they're, you know, maybe a little weak, or they haven't, not so sure of themselves, and they're going to have to learn to overcome that, to have a stronger, to really believe their want and overcome the other person or thing. Yeah. Or maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not always about your main character being likable either. I mean, you know, we have lots of protagonists that are not likable, but they must be interesting. You know, we must be able to kind of have some empathy with them, or some understanding of kind of why they are the way they are. You know, I mean, look at, you know, characters like Tony Soprano, horrible man, but fascinating, you know. So don't always think that characters have to be kind of, you know, the central character has to be pure and unflawed. We're more interested in flawed characters often, because they're more human, they're like us. So no.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, if you think about your bunch of mates or people you hang out with, you know, the ones who, I don't know, you know, the ones who are interesting having conversations with in the pub, or, you know, in the park, wherever you are, generally are the ones who are a little bit, you know, they've got some pushy points, or, you know, there's something going on, but there's always a conflict and there's always something interesting, and it gives you something afterwards that you might go to somebody else and say, I had a conversation with that person today, and you'll never guess what they're thinking or saying or doing. And you've got some gossip, you know, and it's sort of, and that's sort of what you're looking for. Whereas, you know, if I meet an agreeable friend, there's maybe not that much, you know, after a while they get a bit bored, you know, if they're not doing anything that is exciting, or you want to hang out with them. It's sort of, you've got to want to hang out with these people, even if they're a bit unlikable. They've got to surprise you.
Absolutely, you need to follow them.
Yeah.
So I think we can sort of come to a close on the main session now. Hopefully we've given you enough to kind of like persuade you that development is the way to go. It's really important, and especially kind of like, you know, the BFI are really, you know, academy network, they're, you know, they're very invested in developing films, the importance of developing scripts, so that they're ready to go. And I think the development starts with the idea, and, you know, doing your outlining and your synopsis, and really interrogating the idea and the character, so that by the time you get to write your first draft, it's kind of easier, because you know what's happening, and you know what happens in each scene and what needs to happen. So we've got there's going to be a kind of like a back sheet at the end with resources. So I've identified sort of, for further interest and further interrogation and reading and stuff, there'll be lots of addresses there for you, and that will happen in the chat, I think, as well. That's going to be in the chat. But for the last portion, thank you very much, Sarah, let's go over to some questions from our audience. So if I can just identify. Okay, so Emma Lamb, hello, thank you. It sounds like most successful filmmakers have had years of working either in film or some entertainment industry before making their own films. Do you think that people in their early 20s should gain more experience in other areas before trying to write or direct our own films, please? Well, I will quickly say, no, I don't think you do need to quickly, but how do you feel about that, Sarah?
I think absolutely not. I think I just, you know, I've come at it quite late. And I've been on a lot of different development labs with BFI. I am generally the oldest. So, you know, I'm flying the flag for being a bit older. It's not like that at all. And I think it's really important to, we need voices, we need interesting points of view, and I think those start as soon as you're forming them and putting them down. And the whole point of the labs and the whole point of BFI and everybody is people, you know, guiding you to help bring your voice to life and put your point across. So yeah, I had some training with being a creative, but you know, there's it's not the point of it. So just get out there.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, I did start off as an actor, so that was my 20s and stuff. But I think, now we need a diverse and kind of, wonderful panoply of voices and ranges. And so it doesn't matter what your age is, you don't have to be an adult even, that we in the Future Film Festival, the films come from filmmakers, I think there's some under 16 and stuff. So it's your voice, it's what you want to say, because you should be making these films and writing these scripts about things that matter to you, that you want, stories that you want to tell and that are applicable to you, and and will resonate with people of your age and older, because it can all help everybody learn about everybody else by watching films from not their kind of realm. Okay, next question. Charlie Kent, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. What would your advice be on how to decide on a format for your project? I'm keen to begin creating my own project, but struggling to imagine whether it would suit a TV or a film format. Okay, that's quite an interesting one. You any thoughts on that, Sarah? Or
TV or film? Well, okay, so I'm writing TV and film stuff right now. I generally, because I've done short film, find it easier to write the film story before the TV story, because the TV story, it needs to be broken up. And if it's going to be a series that moves, there's going to be series 1, series 2, the structure of that is a little bit different, and what that character is, and they'll never ever be able to beat or attain their goal basically sufficiently by the end of it. So it's a little bit different. I think for me, I find it easier write shorts, as they've helped me learn how to write features, and that in turn has helped me understand now how to break things down and work on characters to make successful formats for TV. That's been my process. I would start there, if and then if it feels like it's going to go into a TV, like I presented something to a group of producers the other day that is a film, and they all went, feels more like a TV series to me. So maybe I'll be developing that into TV series. I don't know, but it can be later down the line, when you bring other people in. You just get the story down, is what I think.
I would kind of largely agree with that. I mean, I think sometimes TV can suddenly present itself as it's a longer story. You want to go into more detailed exploration of the characters' journeys than maybe a feature film might allow you to do. And also, as you start writing, often people start writing films and then kind of go, oh, I can't get it all in. I think it's TV. And also there's lots and lots of characters, so it can be a kind of like a concept that suddenly kind of says to you, this isn't working as a film story, because I can't actually just get the whole story into 90 minutes. It's not going to resolve in that time. And actually, I'd like to explore the other characters in a bit more detail. I might like to have more subplots, and also that's about looking at the structure of TV series. They're all different. It's whether you're writing, half-hour sitcom or a dramedy, or even half-hour dramas. That's very prevalent now. Or it's a 1 hour, or it's a kind of like a mini series, which can be longer episodes in a shorter length of a series. But I'd start writing. I'd just start writing on your story, and then work through the ideas and the characters, and then that might present itself as to whether you'd like to follow it as a TV or a film format. Okay, so Julia Maglione, how do you know when the idea is the one? I always end up with so many different ideas, and then it's so hard to filter the right one. Yes, that's close to my heart. I have that problem. I kind of like, but what I tend to do is to bang the ideas down in a document, sort of like just rough kind of, you know, free writing, so that I actually keep the idea in my head or somewhere, you know, on my desktop or my computer, so that I can go back to it and fill in bits more when I have another thought about it. How does that relate to you, Sarah?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I would say my process is I write the ideas down, I'll bang them all down, I won't think too much about it, I'll put it to one side, I'll do the overnight test, which is I'll forget about it, do something else, have a sleep, wake up in the morning, and generally I trust myself, because the thing I think about that comes to the top of my mind is the one I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would think about it in the morning and think, oh, which ones do I really remember, or which kind of excite me? And generally I'll pick that and have a go with that and just put all the rest to one side. Because I think the problem with having a lot of ideas is they can cripple you from actually, and all you need is one idea, you know, it can stop one idea happening. So you just need to go, okay, I'll do that process, and they'll go, right, I'm just going to concentrate on that right now and getting that down. And I haven't lost the others. I'll come back to them.
Yeah.
But I'll just focus on this.
Yeah, I think again, it's about what about an idea excites you. So again, you know, I will kind of leave things, and if I start thinking about a particular idea, then I know that it's something that I'm more invested in than the others that I've got in my drawer, you know. So I think that's the thing to follow what really kind of excites you, and what can you see more possibilities with, and work on it. It might not end up being the right one, but at least you'll have explored it to find out whether, you know, it is going to be the one that you want to work on. Okay. Oh, this is a hard one. Is really liking an idea and a theme enough? This is from Beth Westbrook. For example, I want to write about witches because I really love witches, and also reflecting on feminist culture and the impact the witch hunts had. I think is that, I can't see the end of that question. To find a more personal reason other than I really love witches. So, right, yes. So how do you kind of expand an idea, kind of like you want to write about something, but you don't know how to make it into a story, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, just listening to all that sounds like my usual sort of formation of a first idea, which is, I know I like something, or okay, I like witches, and I know I want to do something, and maybe like a feminist idea, maybe there's something else going on. For me, that's enough to go, okay, I'm excited about that. I need to really try and progress that. And what I used to hold back on was because I didn't really know how to do it, was story. And now I know that I have to just go, okay, that's it. Now I have to start finding some stories in that. So I might read and research and Google some things on Google, you know, like just start really basic things and reading some facts and finding. I mean, I just go like fact finding for, you know, to like about the topic of witches. I mean, the first, and then start writing a list of questions like, when is that set? You know, is it modern day witch, or is it witch 50 years ago? Is it 100? You know, what is that? Is it, where is that witch? You know, so, and who is the witch? You know, what is their gender? Where do they live? Are they old? Are they young? Are they on their own? Are they not? Is it the most unexpected witch that you've ever come across? Is it the most unlikely feminist that you've ever come across? Is that witch? You know, so I think just asking questions, or at least just writing them down, will help you then start.
Yeah.
You need to find your character.
And also thinking about how you might want to relate it to modern day, you know, so modern feminist culture, and, you know, and the impact of witches. You know, there's been a series recently about witches and demons and vampires and everything. But basically there was this kind of correlation between her as a, she was a time traveling witch. So obviously she went back to the time of, witch trials, but also she had a modern perspective on being a witch and discrimination and all those sorts of things. So it's worth thinking about, do you want it to be set in a modern setting, but somebody that then finds out about witches, and how does that relate to modern culture? There's all sorts of ways of expanding that and finding out where it really kind of like, where you want the story to go, what you want it to be about. But great idea. Okay, James, when do you know when it's time to write? I.e., how do you distinguish between fully prepping your outline and overthinking things? Yeah, this is a problem sometimes. People get lost in, structure and plot and overthinking the outline and how it's going. That's particularly true into things like people who are really concentrating on plot in thrillers and mystery things. It can get a little bit complicated, but I think, to not, in short films certainly, don't overcomplicate it and just really kind of concentrate on the building blocks of the structure. As long as you've got, the beginning, the inciting incident, the dramatic question, and you've got where you want to end up, where that dramatic question is going to end at the end, then you'll have some of the building blocks in between. So don't overthink it in terms of kind of minutiae. Then that's the time to kind of, you will know it's time to just get on and write it and find out what happens.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have like a basic idea, what's the beginning, middle and end, and your inciting event. And the inciting event is important, because if you don't have one, you're sort of bored, like you've got to be excited when you're writing it. And I think when you feel excited about starting to write that script, that's a good time. That's like a sort of signal to yourself, like, okay, let's start putting this down on paper. So I think just listen to your intuition. And I think also, if you're not familiar with the term, the vomit draft, there's a reason why the first draft is called the vomit draft. And you literally just sit there, and if it's a short film, just do it in one sitting and just get it down. Don't think about anything. I mean, the whole point is just, you've just got some answers, so you can just write it and you don't have to ask yourself too many questions. Don't critique yourself, just get it down. And then once it's done, no thinking really when you're just writing that, and it's just, you just need to get yourself from the beginning to the end of it. And then you'll print it off, go and do something, and then come back to it later another day and read it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, do hate it, and that's all right, like
very difficult now writing on screen. It's so easy to edit while you're writing, and you should never do it, especially with the first draft. Do not do it, just get it out there. It will be messy, and we all write terrible first drafts. Don't worry about it. It's not going to come out fully formed.
Yeah, really basic tip is, okay, so once you've done that first draft and you're going to go and you've got some thoughts and ideas, okay, I want to experiment with this or change this, or I generally wouldn't get anybody to read the first draft. That's me personally. I'm too embarrassed, and I generally will hate it. And that's part of it. And then I'll think, okay, I'm going to try it this way now. But golden rule, do not start editing into that vomit draft document. Put it to one side, open up a new document and start writing a new script. And that's my other rule, is like, always do that. Even when you get changes in them from producers or different people, I'll open a new document and I'll start writing that script again. It's a good hygiene thing.
Okay, so heading on to another question. Right. Okay. So oh, that's quite interesting. What advice would you give about writing from a perspective of a different gender, sex, sexuality, race, ethnicity, disability to your own, and handling it sensitively? I would always say, do your research. You know, it needs to be authentic and handled with respect. So, you know, so that I mean, and really just read around the subject, talk to people, you know, so you are kind of fully informed and aware. It's all about, you know, that's part of the process anyway. You need to be doing research on lots of things. You need to do your research so that you can handle things in an authentic manner.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, I'd ask myself also, the question is why I'm telling the story of this person, or that I don't identify with quite literally immediately. Because, for example, you will be asked that question throughout the process. And I think you need to understand and know why, and why you're qualified, you know, to do that. And so, and that's fine if you know, if you are. And I think it, and also it's really important for us to really understand and look at other people's perspective, you know, and your secondary characters will be of, you know, people that you necessarily don't identify with. So you need to research every single character, and you just need to have answers for why each person is there, and how you're telling an authentic story for each person.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely right. You will get asked those questions throughout development, of why, you know, it's as important as, you know, why have you written the film? It's the same thing. So okay, let's see how many we can get through. There's quite a lot. How do you personally deal with writer's block?
Gin. No. Exercise.
I tend to go out for a walk, and, you know, I just leave it, and then I'll go out for a walk and clear my head, and just, you know, if it's something that I'm working on at the time, and I get blocked, then I will put it aside and just kind of, you know, try and clear my head, and then come back to it, you know, a week later, or you know, a day later or something, as much as I can afford to try and kind of clear that. Also, that whole thing about, you know, if you're blocked about starting or writing, the speed writing thing, or the, you know, the free writing thing can really help, because you stop overthinking, and you stop sort of censoring yourself in terms of, you know, your lack of confidence about an idea, or, you know, thinking, oh, it's not really, you know, you just do it, you know. So and try writing something different, you know, doing speed writing on something different. Think of you know, find an idea in a newspaper, or, you know, or in an image, you know, and just sort of try a bit of free writing on that, just to get yourself started again, you know.
I mean, I do loads of different things. I mean, what I realized, I think, as I've gone into more long form, is that walking for me or some kind of other activity for part of the day is part of the writing process. So I need to have like mornings writing, and then afternoons doing something that has nothing to do with that. So part of it might be going for a walk, sometimes getting in the bath, you know, just like something random, cleaning. I mean, these are just like day-to-day chores, but also, you know, going out and doing something with some friends, or just sort of giving yourself some space where your brain can just start working things through for yourself, because you can't find the answers all the time when you sat there at the keyboard. I also think like watching films and reading other short stories, writing other short stories, and I'll go and just start watching films and then writing out their structures, for example, you know, or doing things like that. Just all those exercises help get me out of a block, because they'll help my brain start to process and find some answers. but you aren't going to find the answers just by sort of just sat there. So as soon as you feel it, you've got to leave it.
Yeah, it's change, isn't it? You've just got to kind of like shift perspective.
Yeah.
What are some helpful exercises to make a story out of an idea, location, or character? Well, I would say, you know, it's take the idea. Who is it? Who could be in that idea? You know, so think about what kind of characters might inhabit that idea. If it's a location, again, you know, what type of a location is it? If you're thinking of a hospital, then it might be a kind of a personal hospital drama. Who are the characters? Who are the kind of the roles that might that you might find in that location? For character, helpful exercises to make a story. I mean, I think, you know, interrogating a character, kind of thinking about character in location, putting a character in a location. Are they a fish out of water in that location? Is it where they normally are? What's the conflict? What's the juxtaposition that sort of starts a story off? Again, I kind of think if you've got character, a useful exercise is to find an antagonist. So if you think of a character and it might be, you know, to use yourself, for instance, as a starting point, think of somebody that you don't like and write for 5 minutes, free form. Don't take the pen off the page or your fingers off the keyboard, and just write what you think about them. So what you think they are, what is it that annoys you about them, and what kind of a person they are. Then write another 5 minutes, free form, as that person writing about you. So then you have to put yourself in their shoes and write everything that they think about you. So that sort of, then you kind of like, you're working through conflict, you're looking at conflict, and you're looking at empathy for the characters, even though this person is somebody that you don't like and you don't get on with, but then you're having to think about how do they feel about you. So, and you might find that's surprising to you. So that can spark off an idea. Have you got any ideas?
Well, I think I do. What am I interested in lists? You know, like, so I'll write just a rant, because basically if I'm not interested in some part of this story or I want to create, I'm not going to write it, because there's way better things to do than sit at a desk and start writing that out. So I'll make a massive list. I mean, it can be all sorts. I mean, it can be what food you like, it can be moments, it can be you know, I'm massively into UFOs, because after I spent a lot of time in lockdown listening to podcasts about UFOs, animals, you know, just like random stuff and it has nothing to do, or maybe there's a place that I'm interested in but I've never been there, you know, or just sort of random things. And I think that's where I use Pinterest to look for random sort of visuals as well, because they might spark ideas. And then say if I've got a location, so I really want to shoot in a house, but I'm interested in UFOs, I might start thinking about a UFO story in, I don't know, a broom cupboard of the house, or I'll make associations like that. And then another exercise, so I did stand-up comedy when I was younger, and like one way of making jokes is you make 2 little diagrams. So you'll put one, I'll get one, right, one here, one here. You might go, okay, I'm going to list in this circle with all the little bits sticking out of it, figures of authority, prime ministers, for example. So, you know, you write all the different people you can think of, good and bad. And then in the other one, you might go, okay, something completely random, supermarkets, you know, so list every shop and thing I know. And then you try and make a connection between one of each thing. So, you know, say if you've got Margaret Thatcher in the Prime Minister side and Liddell on the next, can you write a story for that? So the point is about trying to put two random things together, you know, like random prompts.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really sorry we didn't get through all of the questions, but we've got to wrap up now. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Sarah. Thank you so much for giving your time and your wisdom on writing, and I'm going to pass back to Alex.
Thank you so much, Theresa. Thank you, Sarah. That was really, really, really insightful. Amazing. Thank you. And thank you everyone watching for all your questions. We received over 60 questions, so apologies that we're not able to get through all of them, but hopefully you'll learn loads. And I know a lot of you have asked in the chat about captions, about us sending you links that were mentioned by Theresa and Sarah. We have recorded this session and it will be posted on the BFI YouTube channel this week. So you will get a chance to rewatch all of this again, and an email will be sent to you after this event from Eventbrite with all the resources mentioned as well. Before you go, I just wanted to ask if you could take a couple of minutes to help us fill in a short survey and let us know what you thought of today's event and how useful it was for you, and what can we improve for our upcoming online events. So Noel will post the link to the chat survey in the chat box now, and it will also be emailed to you in that same email by Eventbrite. If you can take a couple of minutes, we read every single survey and your feedback would be hugely helpful. That would be great. And as I said at the beginning, today was our first lab of the 2022-23 season and the first session in a two-part series about screenwriting. So our next session, part 2 of this, will take place in June, and it will be a masterclass on the importance of genre for short films. So we'll cover the origins of how genre became a key element in the industry and why it still remains so today. We'll talk about short films and their makers who have gone on to be super successful by understanding and harnessing the potential of a genre. And we'll also look at strategies for understanding and using genre principles for you in your own project. So a hugely important session. It will take place on Monday, the 6th of June at 6:30 p.m. right here on Zoom. And we'll be opening up registrations really soon. So keep an eye out on the Film Academy social channels, and we'll let you know as soon as registrations are open. But do sign up. It will be a really useful session. It will be led by Gabs, who works closely with Theresa. They are our BFI Film Academy script doctors. And then also take a look at our website, keep an eye out on it. We will be announcing future labs as well there too. So from July onwards, this year we're doing a mix of online labs like this one and also in-person labs taking place at the BFI South Bank in London. So thanks everyone for joining today. Keep an eye out on that email from Eventbrite with all the resources and the survey link, and the recording will be up by the end of this week. Have a lovely evening. Thank you again, Theresa and Sarah, and see you all in June.